Thank you very much. Good morning, Berlin. How are you?
Fine.
Awesome. I know what you're thinking. The shoes are totally ruining the outfit. I get it. I'm okay with that. So I have become very weirdly excited about streamlining my decision making. And so if I have one less thing to worry about with the outfit, that saves so much time. So let me ask you, what's our most important resource? Just shout it out. Water, air, love. How about time? So thank you so much for spending your time, our most valuable resource, here with me this morning. I know it's super early and, with each other. I'm very, very happy to be here in Berlin because I'm actually born in Berlin. Ich bin ein Berliner. So I'm super excited to be back here. Thank you so much for the organizers, Boris for having me, and Danny for introducing me to Boris. Super awesome. So I want to start with something that happened on Friday. As you see, I have a knee thing, and what happened is I went for a run during lunchtime, and because it was in the beginning of the run, I was still full of energy, and I came really fast, and I had this great vision of working up a sweat, and then the sun would give me a tan, and it was all perfect. And suddenly, I was in air, and I landed on my elbow and on my kneecap. So I had to get it checked out, and the reason I'm mentioning it is, so the knee's fine, by the way, so I can walk, but I can't bend the knee. And last episode of Game of Thrones coming up, and thank you. One laugh. Thank you. The reason I'm mentioning is because I had the elbow wound, they wanted to give me a tetanus shot, which had been, ages and ages ago. So the doctor was like, and he gave me a shot, and it just made me realize, we live in the 21st century, and we all have access to, relatively affordably to all these great innovations, like a vaccine, right? But still, in the 21st century, there are children dying every day from medieval diseases because some parents refuse to vaccinate their kids. How does it make you feel? Mind blown, yes or no? Yeah, incredible. And that's why I'm so grateful that we have an event like this where you can come together and make a stance for science and for making the world a better place. So let me start with a quote, and I have to adjust the light of the screen again. The future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed yet. By William Gibson, who, by the way, just won one of the Nebula Awards yesterday in the US. And why is the even distribution of the future, why is this so important? And why is biohacking and synthetic biology so important? Why should we all care? So I grew up, I'm born here, but I'm Swiss Greek by passport. So I grew up as a Swiss Greek half orphan in this tiny flat with a single mother, and my little family was struggling. So we were in this small flat that was crammed full of books and, science fiction and fantasy and everything, and colorful art and creatures and drawings and sculptures, because my mother is an artist. And we lived right next to the railway lines. So each time that a train would pass with this huge roar, I was engrossed in some kind of a science fiction story, and I would imagine this was some kind of a spaceship lifting us off to a better world. But a couple years later, another science fiction book changed my life. The Andromeda Strain, written by Michael Crichton, who also wrote, as some of you may know, Jurassic Park. And it made me realize that, let me tell you what it's about first. It's about a virus that comes to Earth through a meteorite and then wreaks havoc on humanity. And if we think about a virus, it's barely even alive, right? It's a piece literally of genetic code put in some kind of a capsid hardware. But it holds this tremendous power. And that is the book that sparked it and launched me through the rabbit hole, because my thinking was, okay, I remember back this memory when I was wishing I could hop on a spaceship and find a better world, a new world. But what if we could hack this genetic software like a computer program and instead fix the shit here and make the world here a better place? And since then, I've been lucky enough, as you heard in my introduction, to help build and launch some of the most amazing biotech startups of our generation. I get to travel the world and try to advocate for using science and technology. And I now get to talk to you about how we can use the software of life to undoom the world. Can we do that? In a nutshell, natürlich. Thank you very much. That's it. Thank you. See you later. So a Scandinavian Business Time paper or something called My Last Keynote Frazzled. They said nice things, but they also said frazzled because there's so much going on. So this time I'm going to do the same thing, and I appreciate it's a mind-blowing journey. So we're going to dive into and zoom into the very, very small, the software of life, to understand how we can make molecular assembly lines to produce stuff and better stuff. And then we're going to zoom out a little bit and see how we can fix the Anthropocene. And then, if you'll still be with me, we will zoom out even further and explore how we could build self-sustaining space settlements with genetic software. So I have introduced some chapters now to unfrazzle it. So I will share with you why biohacking has ushered in the dawn of the synthetic age, an age where most flagship products will no longer just be manufactured, but grown. It's a pretty exciting time, and it's as exciting in biotech right now as it was in the computer industry in the early 70s when the Apple II came out and computers became personal for the first time. So we can now design, test, and build artificial organisms in the cloud from a smartphone. And these are technologies that already exist today. These companies are called Synthase, OpenTrans, and Transcriptic. And the reason I mention technology is I will show you, all the glossy stories from the front end of biology to show you what can we do with it. But it's really important that we appreciate the back end of biology, where the stuff in the R&D phase is actually done. And still, if we don't appreciate that biology is still incredibly difficult and heart-wrenching and soul-crushing at times, we devalue the breakthroughs that it actually can create. So it's important to keep in mind biotech is still super hard, and that's why it's even more awesome that we now have really, really amazing products coming from there. So how does the synthetic age look like? For instance, it's a time when artists can recreate the faces of complete strangers from nothing but DNA samples found in the street. So you might want to check if your face is up there. It's called Stranger Visions. It's an age where we can walk around with wearable microbial factories that photosynthesize molecules and sense, and in the future could power our smartphones. It's an age where AI algorithms grow and design biomimetic chairs made from or inspired by human bone structures to make for a more ergonomic sitting experience. So if we zoom into biology, it's really amazing that all of us sitting here, the clip didn't play. Hopefully the next one will. Little heads up. So we are all sitting here because we're the product of an unbroken chain of cell divisions of a family of genetic replicators that have evolved through 4.5 billion years. And at this scale, So the diameter of the double helix is 2.5 nanometers, which is similar to Silicon Valley chip architecture, which is getting more miniaturized, but it's in around that range. And so when we enter the nano world, it gets really weird. And that's why the software engineers of life are also explorers and astronauts, pushing boundaries and creating new worlds. So we all know that a bird flies through the air, right? But a fairy fly, the smallest known flying insect, actually swims through the air. So some of the laws we take for granted shift. And one of the weird things is the phenomenon of self-assembly. So if I have like a coffee cup that is 37 degrees warm, I shake it a little bit, I add some components, and then I keep shaking it and sprinkle some ingredient magic. Suddenly out comes maybe an iPhone. And we have things like mutation. So the iPhone may suddenly become a smartwatch or a Bluetooth speaker. But the weirdest thing you need to know about biotech is it's accelerating exponentially fast. And you can see it in this number. It cost us $2.7 billion and took 15 years to sequence the 3 billion base pairs of the human genome. And today, we can do it for about $1,000 in less than 2 days. And we are entering the era of the truly personal genomics because we have soon the $100 genome. And that will open a whole host of ethical questions that I'd love to hear your input on. So if the next Facebook would be a genomics company, would you donate your data to train medical algorithms and help cure diseases? Or would you, be reluctant about third-party sharing, maybe insurances, employers? So it's a tremendous opportunity for all of us to really co-create the future. And reading and writing DNA is so much faster than Moore's law. So I don't love this graph anymore because it's a logarithmic scale and it kind of makes the differences seem more extreme. But still, biology as an information technology has outpaced Moore's law. And Mr. Microsoft himself, Bill Gates, said if he would grow up today, he wouldn't hack computers anymore. He would hack biology. So it's a pretty significant time. And now I'd like you to imagine the very first computer. Must be some kind of a huge room-filling machine that only big institutions can afford, right? Something like this. This is not a computer. This is the first genome sequencer, so gene sequencer. And it was used first to sequence the genome of a bacteriophage in 1977, so just a bit after the Apple II came out. And today, sequencing can be done very differently. The object in the red square is, about the proportions of a smartphone in our pocket. And this is Kate Rubin. She looks pretty happy because she just did an experiment to sequence a genome from a microorganism with a handheld genome sequencer called the Minion from Oxford Nanopore. And they have since even done better, more iterations. And she looks really happy because this is not just some random biotech lab on Earth. This is on the International Space Station. So Kate Rubin is a NASA astronaut who just sequenced the first genome in the microgravity of space. It's unbelievable. And just like in software, we now have biohacker garages popping up everywhere. And one example is you can order a CRISPR kit by mail from one of these biohacker garages. And we will see if the video works. This is Josiah Zahner, a friend of mine, and hopefully I can give you a brief glimpse of what he's working on. That really is a good question. What would you build with genetic software? So this is just something I want to share from the world of synthetic biology. It's called iGEM, and it stands for Competition for, wait for it, Genetically Engineered Biomachines. And I had the privilege to take part of this, I think, 9 years ago. And it's a competition where people all over the world come together, literally just over a limited amount of time over the summer with a limited budget, a couple $1,000 to build something awesome with biology. And these are not, senior academics and postdocs and highly trained people. These are high school students. These are citizen scientists, biohackers, and undergrads. So if they can do it, all of us can. So how about building a better world? So innovation alone can't save us anymore. Time is running out. We're trapped in this global hackathon to fix the Anthropocene, and the doomsday clock is literally ticking. As we all know, the world is on fire. Who here in the audience is a millennial? I'm a millennial. Any other? Yeah, few? Yeah? So congratulations, because who pays for climate change? We do. Millennials do. Poor nations do, and millennials do. So it will cost our generation a loss of $8.8 trillion lifetime earnings if we don't act on climate change. And I just, you all know images like this. So in Antarctica, an ice shelf broke off the size of Dakota. This is, the fires in California that look literally like the hellfires of the surface of Venus. And I know friends of mine who shared on social media their heartbreaking stories about how they lost their homes. And I was recently at an event where someone from an insurance spoke and said, a 4-degree world is uninsurable. So who's going to pay for these homes? We really need to act now. So we all know climate change is real, it's not a hoax, and it's very urgent. I just want you to know and appreciate 2 numbers. 4 degrees of separation. So we're on track to warm the world 4 degrees. And I always get comments like, sure, but my weather app shows me greater variation than that. Tomorrow it's 8 degrees warmer, and last week it was minus 10 degrees, and that's normal. But the thing is, we're talking about global average temperatures. And that's a different story. So I want you to imagine, how does the world look like that is 4 degrees cooler? It was called the last ice age. The Canadian prairies were covered in a 1 kilometer thick layer of glacial ice. So now imagine the opposite, and we heat the globe 4 degrees. It's literally a dystopian, post-apocalyptic, Mad Max-like mess we will have on our hands. And now I'd like you to take a deep breath. Feels nice, right? And another one. So the second breath we owe to the oceans. The ocean produces between 50 and 85% of all the oxygen that we breathe. And we are choking it in plastic. And we're choking ourselves. So we are sleepwalking right into the 6th mass extinction. Humanity has deleted 60% of all species, and we have only just launched a cascade to delete ourselves. This is why innovation alone can't save us anymore. But something else can. Disruption. Disruptive innovation. And one of my favorite quotes is by a guy you all know. I think the greatest innovations of the 21st century will happen at the intersection of biology and technology. A new era is beginning. And this intersection, indeed, is super, super exciting. And there's so much stuff happening that we have to know about, and we have to come together to accelerate. So at this conversion, there's the first synthetic biology unicorn is currently valued officially at about $1.3 billion. And it's one of my favorite examples because it was, I met the founder 8 years ago at a conference about synthetic biology, SB5 at Stanford, which really changed my life. And since then, the company has grown into this gigantic organism factory. It's a creature factory. And it's this amalgamation of tech tech and robots and data in AI and genome engineering and microbiology, but also design and creativity and inclusion and diversity. And this is exactly what we need. And so this company is called Ginkgo Bioworks. And one example that I recently came across is they had this collaboration with the fragrance and flavor manufacturer Robertet. And so Ginkgo scanned genes to recreate a certain biosynthetic pathway for the scent of an extinct flower. It's pretty cool, right? And it just made me wonder, if you could smell like an extinct creature, what would you choose to smell like? Are you like a T-Rex kind of guy, or a raptor kind of gal? Or how about your extinct cat? So it's pretty tremendous when we bring together tech and bio. And another example is the collaboration between Apple and an Australian startup called Cochlear. It stands for the inner ear. I always pronounce this wrong, but I looked up how to pronounce, and so Cochlear. And they make this implantable signal processing device for the hard of hearing that lets them stream music and calls directly into their inner ear and turns them into cyborgs. So now we know the video works. I want to share how you actually become a cyborg. You ready? Awesome.
Patrick Kramer of DigiWell and Elsa Sotiriadis of Pioneers will be very brave now. So welcome on the stage, please, Patrick and Elsa.
The brave volunteers.
Welcome on the stage and give me a high five as well. Thank you very much. And hello, Patrick.
What we are going to do here is a live chip implantation on stage, and we have a wonderful volunteer, Elsa, here, and I'm going to do the procedure now.
An applaud for the brave volunteer.
Big round of applause for Elsa.
If you're squeamish, look away now.
Pretty brave, actually. I think it's amazingly brave. And girl, that's amazing. And I think we're done. Elsa, you've just turned into a cyborg. Holy shit! Holy shit! What's gonna happen?
So, ladies and gentlemen, or should I say, dear humans, thank you for that. And I'll hold this a bit into the camera. Still at Pioneers. Okay, something happened.
Something happened.
It's now success already. Did something happen on Twitter of Pioneers? This would now be the other phone here.
Okay.
It worked?
Yes, it bloody worked. It bloody worked. This is what you wanted, isn't it?
This is what I wanted.
So your hand just tweeted?
My hand just tweeted.
Holy fuck.
I bet you were wondering, what is the demo? What is supposed to happen? Yeah, so my hand tweeted from a microchip. That's the tweet. My handle was a different one. And so what I didn't show because of time, I think it's confusing. It actually did a second command, but you can ask me in the Q&A about that. And so you know, if you've done or developed something like, you know, a cancer moonshot for a PhD, then, you know, having a small microchip gadget may not seem very profound, like a plaything. But what it's really about for me is to show people that technology and science isn't something we should just passively witness and you know, tolerate or just acceptable fates that come from that. But it's something we take in our own hands, literally. And that's what the cyborg thing is about. So I now have a biological birthday, which was shortly ago, and I have a cyborg birthday, which is coming up on the 25th. It's very soon. And so, you know, cyborgs, it all sounds a bit like science fiction, right? And science fiction, though, is already here and is becoming reality. So we all know, you know, Star Trek, right? Yeah, I see nods. So there was 2 years ago, there was the X Prize Foundation prize together with Qualcomm, and it was called the Tricorder Prize. And the challenge was literally to turn Star Trek's tricorder into a real device, into reality. So the challenge was it needs to continuously monitor 5 vital stats, 13 disease state, weigh less than 5 pounds, so like a little bird in your hand, and it has to be operable by lay people, right? Not trained doctors or anything, just anyone. And it had a winner. New Frontiers Tech developed the device you see now. Admittedly, it's a bit bigger than a handheld device. It's about the size of a shoebox, and there's a bunch of finger pricks and sensors and patches, and you have an iPad or an app-based menu, and it walks you through all the different diagnoses you can do. And right now, they claim they can detect and distinguish, diagnose 43 different disease states. It's pretty incredible. So I take no responsibility for whether or not that's true, but they're currently undergoing FDA trials to test the device and then bring it to market. The reason I mention these blurring lines between fiction and science fiction and science is because it's so important, and I'm also really looking forward to Emma's talk afterwards about science fiction. And why is sci-fi so important if we think of how can we redesign the world? Because we have to disrupt responsibly. We have to create responsible technologies. And science fiction is amazing in the sense that it's not just an escapist fantasy to hop on a spaceship and live on another planet. It's also a device and a common shared space to explore the futures we desire and don't desire. It inspires the bold imaginations that we need to launch disruptive innovations into the world. It also is a narrative, right? And we are neurobiochemically hardwired to respond to narratives. And narrative is an empathy engine, and empathy is the key to the best design. So now we understand a little bit about design and the software of life. Let me tell you about the slow magic of biological design. Another quote that I really like is by Arthur C. Clarke: "Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic." And the most ancient, powerful, complex, magnificent design language in the solar system is one you've probably never heard of, and it's called biomimicry. Designing with biology, unlocking the potential of nature's blueprint that have evolved through billions and billions of years to use it to make a better world. And it helps us rethink our economy. The linear economy is based on extraction from the natural world. But what if we can use biological design to close the loop to a circular economy? One where we rethink the stuff we make and the stuff we buy and how we dispose of stuff, because there's so much stuff and we don't need more stuff. We need better stuff, right? Better stuff. And the trillion, the circular economy alone in Europe can unlock the growth potential of 1.8 trillion euros and create a bunch of jobs. It's really significant. So now let me show you some examples of products we can create today with biological design. Who here would drink coffee fermented by microbes? Yeah, 40%-ish. 40%. Okay. So how about a health drink made from algae? Slightly more, getting brave. How about chicken-free chicken? Would you eat that? Nice, 50%. Or egg-free egg white cookies and shrimp-free shrimp. We also have glow-in-the-dark beer from CRISPR-edited yeast that you can buy from the kit that I showed you earlier. Or the beginning of the end of plastic bottles with this new algae-based membrane that just creates a water blob. It's called skipping rock slab. And then we have algae shoes that you can, if they have exceeded the lifespan and you're done running with them, you can just throw it out in the garden and it will compost. And we have ties made from spider silk grown in a bioreactor, and we have biological pixels made from jellyfish DNA. And it runs something like this, if it works. Sorry about that. So you were supposed to see like Tetris-like glowing pixels that just stream down, and all made by biology. And this is the mushroom. So grow it yourself is the new do-it-yourself. And this is created by Ecovative Design, a startup in the US, and it lets you grow a lamp out of mushroom mycelia in your own home. And remember this picture from the very beginning. These are petri dishes, and they show streptomyces. They're soil microbes, so dirt microbes. Doesn't sound very exciting, right? And this is Jake and Dakota. They here work in the accelerator that I ran. They were 2 batches before I came. And in tech, we all know we mine, crypto and Bitcoin. But in biotech, how about mining microbes? This is what they're doing. So they're turning this useless, uninspiring dirt microbe into a powerful factory for life-saving antibiotics. And that's what you can see here in the pink petri dish, is the expression of the antibiotic. So what about health? We can create shuttles for cancer drugs to specifically only be uptaken by sick cells. We can now detect certain types of cancer, instead of in 3 days, in 12 hours. We can build AI engines to detect cancer drugs much faster. We can build machines that turn digital data into a piece of DNA in the palm of your hand. And we can grow neurons on a petri dish, are you still with me, to give drones a sense of smell. It's crazy, right? It sounds like science fiction, but it's better than that because it's happening for real. In about mid-century, 2050, 66% of the global population will live in cities. And we will reach, depending on the projection you look at, 9 billion people, 9.8 billion people. And we really urgently have to rethink how will we feed, clothe, shelter, heal, clean up after 9 billion people. And biomimicry and biological design and biohacking can really give us a solution that can work for everybody. For instance, plant-based meat and cell-grown meat, cell-based and plant-based meat. So global meat consumption is projected to rise 70% in the next 3 decades. And at the same time, the feed conversion rate of beef cattle is about 1 to 6. So you need to feed them a unit of 6 stuff to get a unit of 1 stuff out. It doesn't sound very efficient, right? And it's part of the problem, because we have come to view animals as mere vectors of cellular meat accumulation. We just think of efficiency and think that over 90% of that energy we put into that cattle is lost. But it's not lost. The cattle uses it to freaking live. Right? So what if we could use biohacking to engineer the animal out of the food supply chain? You may have heard of the Impossible Whopper. It's the plant-based burger patty created by a US company, a startup called Impossible Foods. And it consists of proteins from soy and potato, a bit of sunflower oil, and another type of oil. And they just raised $300 million in the same week that Mosa Meats, their closest also plant-based competitor, has gone IPO, so has gone public, and you can buy shares right now. I don't have investment, by the way, just because it's amazing. And so Burger King has now rolled out nationwide in the US the Impossible Whopper, and they want to launch it in Burger King in the UK as well by the end of 2019. And at the same time, we have a slightly less mature industry, which is the cell-based meat, so the lab-grown burgers. So we have a bunch of startups in the fund, in the portfolio where I worked at, SOSV, and there's a company called Memphis Meats, which created the first chicken breast grown in a bioreactor. And the first lab-grown burger, how much do you think it cost in euro? Shout out a number. More. Less, slightly less. More. So it cost $250,000 freaking euros to create the first lab-grown burger. And now there's a company, you know, the current price depends on the startup you look at, but just as an example, there's a lab-grown meat company in Israel called Aleph Farms, and they can do the same kind of medium ambitious burger patty for $50. It's really impressive. So we still have to reach the economics of scale to really make cell-based meat a reality, but it's really, really promising. And we still need to do, you know, life cycle assessment to confirm it actually really has a lower environmental impact, but we're pretty sure it does. And then the main emissions will actually just come from the energy to operate the biomanufacturing plant and logistics to deliver it into cities. But we already have vertical farms here, right? So the hope is that actually we can just use renewable energy and use a craft beer model to then ultimately grow things locally. So you could have a solar-powered, wind-powered, local craft meat brewery at your disposal. I mentioned very briefly the extinction, and just want to give you a brief overview on why there's actually a climate case to build a de-extinction zoo. There's about 1.5 trillion tons of CO2 locked up in the permafrost region. And this is double the amount locked up in biomass in all the forests of the world. It's tremendous. And the permafrost region alone covers 24% of the entire northern hemisphere of our home planet. It's tremendous. And slowly, because of global warming, as you know, it's melting and it's releasing the CO2 into the atmosphere like a vapor-based time bomb. So how could we keep the permafrost region cold? So it wasn't always a permafrost region, of course. You know, we had an ice age and so forth, and at some point it was called the woolly mammoth steppe, or just the mammoth steppe. And that's why in the previous slide I had a picture of the mammoth. So there's a current project made, it's called the Pleistocene Park, and it doesn't have the de-extinction angle, but it's a father-son pair who are scientists who want to research how can we save the permafrost region. And they found that actually if we would reintroduce herbivores, or in our case, you know, ancient herbivores to make it more efficient, who would feed on the grasslands, they would push away the snow, which is insulating. So paradoxically, the layer of snow makes it warmer. So they would feed on the grass, push away the snow, and then the soil would actually no longer be insulated, and we could cool it 3 to 4 degrees Fahrenheit. And if we could build a de-extinction zoo that actually had a badass woolly mammoth and the musk ein Ochse, I forgot the name in English, and the reindeers and horses and these ancient herbivores, we could cool down the permafrost to avoid the release of this ticking time bomb. Not to mention, it would be really cool to visit such a zoo, right? Minus being eaten alive because they're just herbivores. In case you want to read, there's just some book tips. One is by George Church, whom I finally met for the first time a couple of weeks ago. So now we have seen what the molecular factories of cells look like, how we can reprogram genetic software, what products we can make, how we could fix the Anthropocene. But now let's zoom out even more. Does humanity need a backup system? What if we can't fix it fast enough? And the 10 years will decide the fate of the next 1,000 years on the planet. You know how astronauts describe Earth when they return from space? Shout it out, adjectives. Fragile, I heard fragile, exactly. And the other one is beautiful. A beautiful, fragile, struggling little planet. And so we really need new moonshots. Since Kennedy gave in 1969 the moonshot speech, 8 years later, NASA landed 2 people on the moon for the Apollo 11 mission. And since then, it has been over 45 years, we haven't landed anyone on the moon. But space is incredibly important, but maybe we need to think even bigger than that. So how about a Mars shot? It's not really going to that direction, you might think, because we will never terraform Mars. Really. Because, first of all, in a nutshell, there just isn't enough CO2. And I know Elon Musk is, an inspiring entrepreneur, and he has mostly incredibly brilliant ideas, but like nuking Mars to heat the atmosphere, it doesn't make sense. And there's not enough CO2 to actually warm the atmosphere. And we have a terrible track record in terraforming planets. Sure, we're really, really good at melting ice and releasing CO2 and warming a planet. We got that down. We're experts in this, but there isn't enough CO2 to warm Mars. But I think it's still an incredibly important area that we have to talk about, because so the stages of building a civilization are: you have exploration first, you have an outpost, you have a colony, you have a civilization. And building outposts to back up a copy of humanity is very useful for us and our future, but also for Earth, because we have to explore how we can build self-sustaining space settlements. But let's look at how could we create an outpost on Mars? So first of all, it's super far away, 250 million miles. It's 1,000 times farther than the moon, and it will take us about 8 months instead of 3 days. I have to watch. So it's microgravity. It has no atmosphere, so the surface gets bombarded by radiation. It's not very homely, not a great holiday spot. Atmosphere consists of CO2. So you will instantly choke to death if something happens, and it's freaking cold. It's minus 81 degrees Fahrenheit, so about minus 60 degrees Celsius. So it's worse than the Arctic. You can't eat, you can't breathe. There's literally nothing there, or is there? So I will skip this. The first time I heard about astrobiology was at NASA Ames Research Center after this conference at Stanford 8 years ago, and it blew my mind because it was like a closed loop. So I had grown up reading about the Andromeda strain, the space virus, and now I learned at NASA, just a workshop, but I learned how we can actually create microbes that could survive in space, could survive on Mars to produce useful stuff for us, even up there. Or right or left, I don't know, on Mars. And let's just briefly look at a really, really important thing that the BFR, the Big Falcon rocket that SpaceX is developing, has now changed about that one. So this is SpaceX's rocket that is supposed to go to Mars. It consists of 42 Raptor engines, and it has a thrust of like 127 megatons, so it can lift off 4.5 Titanics into orbit Massive, massive, massive. Or 125 Teslas. And the important thing is it runs on methane. And methane is kind of a biomolecule, right? So we can skip the combustion equations, but the message here is we can make all the stuff that we need to, once we go to Mars, to leave Mars again. We can make all that stuff with biology. And just briefly, so the next Mars mission will be to search for a reliable source of water and then build a propellant plant to create methane and oxygen. And so the mission will get mining equipment, mining for the water on Mars. And the interesting thing is, indeed, it's not just rocks, but there is water on Mars, right? And water could mean obvious life, yes. And let's just look at how we could make some of these equations happen to create a combustion to not die on Mars, but actually get back to the home planet. There are the so-called halobacteria that live in freaking weird environments that are like alien worlds. They are bacteria that can survive for thousands and thousands of years in salty brines. And there are plenty of brines on Mars. So these rock-like things, they can survive in sulfur mines. And they can survive in space while being bombarded by radiation in minus 80 degrees Celsius. So this is the C. radiodurans, called Conan the bacterium. Because you can punch it with radiation, you can, freeze it to death, except it just won't die. So if we would pick this hardware and upload a new genome from a methanogene, this could be really, really exciting. So a methanogene basically eats CO2, of which we have plenty in the Martian atmosphere. And with sunlight, of which there's plenty as well. There's no atmosphere, plenty of, it's sunny on Mars. And it poops out methane, rocket fuel. So it gets really exciting. And you can, instead of a propellant plant to split water from the water ice of Mars, you could have algae and photosynthesize all the stuff you need. And I appreciate biology might not be the most reliable yet to go to space, but we really have to explore the possibility. And so these are just some examples of how we can build stuff with biology. And a Martian ice dome could be a home to be filled with water and then shield us from radiation. And so to build self-sustaining space settlements and make a backup copy of humanity, but also fix stuff on Earth, we really need to infuse our minds with genetic literacy so we can operate the OS of life. I wanted to end with a quote that kind of closes the loop between, how biology is our magic power and how we all need to become biofuturists and citizens of biology. But there's something much more important than that. It's not technology, it's not biology that is our superpower, but it's people. And so I want to say, embrace your weirdness, embrace your geekiness, and don't fit in, because fitting in is the opposite of belonging. So embrace your weirdness and belong, and together we have to change the world. Thank you.